Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gautama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all here this morning. We're going to start our morning like we do each morning with meditation. We're going to be doing loving kindness meditation. I'm going to just do chanting and go into breathing mindfulness meditation to start out. I won't provide any guidance there to helping you guys to be meditating without any guidance. And then when we get to the loving kindness portion, I'll come in with the guidance for the loving kindness meditation. And then we'll come out by going back to some breathing mindfulness meditation and then into the chanting. After our meditation, the topics that I'm going to be sharing this morning are eliminating fears. Are you really scared? I'm going to be teaching you how to eliminate your fears. If you have any fear, like fear of death or fear of spiders or snakes or things like this, there are specific things you can do to actually eliminate these fears so they don't shake up the mind any longer. Because when you're fearful, it's no fun and it shakes up the mind. And then after our mid-morning break, I'm going to share the topic of God, this being God that you may have had exposure to in the past. I'll teach you the things that the Buddha shared about this being, and then share with you things that you can do in order to either have a relationship with this being or not have a relationship with this being. Because you can still get to enlightenment regardless, whether you have a relationship with God or not, because it's not God who determines whether you get to enlightenment or not, it's you. So I'll teach you how to do this, whether you are interested in that relationship or not, because there's certain things that you need to learn and understand related to this being. And then this afternoon, after lunch, I'm going to teach you 2 new meditations that you may not have learned before, which is the meditation to eliminate sexual cravings. If you're looking to either reduce them or eliminate your sexual cravings, that meditation will help you with that. And then there's a meditation to help you realize non-self, eliminating personal existence view. So I'm going to teach you that this afternoon, and then we'll actually do that one this afternoon as well. So if you'd like to join for meditation, you're welcome to join in with the chanting, and then I'll come back in with the guidance on loving kindness after we do our breathing mindfulness meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Potang Mahakawanhang Apiwateyami Savakato Mahakawata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho วิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภาควาติ Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May we be peaceful. May we be safe. May we be well. May we be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May all those who I come into contact with today be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May all those who hate me be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May all those who I hate be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be free of discontentedness and the suffering it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโหตังมหาเกวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see you all here this morning. Nice to come together as a class and share the teachings of the Buddha with you. By the time you get to enlightenment, there's no fear in the mind whatsoever. You've eliminated all the fears. There's no fear whatsoever. In order to eliminate your fear, you need to first understand what's causing it. And that's what we've talked about in the past when we've discussed the three universal truths. If you remember these from our various classes where I've helped you understand the universal truth of impermanence, discontentedness, and non-self, I helped you to understand craving, desire, attachment, this longing, this yearning. And then we went through the Four Noble Truths themselves, where you can independently verify everything that I was teaching in the three universal truths, the craving, desire, attachment in the Four Noble Truths, that the problem that the mind is experiencing is discontentedness. This is the problem. Then the cause of that is craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning. That's what's causing the discontentedness. All the anger, the sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, it's all being caused by exactly the same thing. This is why you don't need to have one meditation for stress and one meditation for fear and one meditation for guilt, because it's all being caused by the same thing. So you're working to eliminate this craving, desires, attachments, the longing, the yearning, wanting things to be a certain way, because this is the cause of all discontentedness. And you can see that in the second noble truth, but you can verify it in your life where you look at situations where you've been angry or you've been frustrated or agitated, or even you've been happy or excited, and you can see that it's your mind's craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning. And you can also see this in relationship to fears, that with fear, the mind wants things to be a certain way. The mind's craving this permanence. I permanently don't want to see spiders. I permanently don't want to see a snake, or I want permanent existence. So therefore I'm afraid to die, right? Or the mind's holding on to all these material possessions and all these relationships. So the mind's afraid to die. There's this fear to die. Or maybe you don't know what's next, what's coming after this. So therefore the mind's afraid about that, afraid of the unknown. There's this craving, desire, attachment in the mind is producing all discontentedness, even fear itself. So in order to eliminate fear, you need to understand what's causing it. So I'm just kind of refreshing your memory on this a bit, that it's the craving, desire, attachment that's causing these fears. It's not the snake itself. It's not the spider itself. It's not the fact that we're all going to die. That's not what's actually causing the fear to arise. It's the craving. It's the longing. It's the holding on, the clinging, the wanting things to be a certain way. So the way that you eliminate fear, just from a high level, before we go into the specifics, is you eliminate craving, desire, attachment. You need to eliminate these cravings where the mind is holding on. And you understand some techniques of how to generally do this with breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity in the entire Eightfold Path. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you some specific things you can do in order to eliminate these cravings, desires, attachments. So it is the Eightfold Path that you need to learn as a foundational teaching in order to eliminate any discontentedness. But as it relates to fears, there's things that you can do to specifically eliminate these fears. So learning the Eightfold Path is what you need in order to build that foundation. Without this, you wouldn't be able to eliminate your fear, because anytime the fear is coming up, you need the mindfulness, the right mindfulness, to be able to observe that and notice that that's coming up. You need that awareness of mind. So if you hadn't developed mindfulness, you wouldn't be able to do the things that I'm about to teach you. And the way that you develop your mindfulness is through the step of right concentration, training your mind in breathing, mindfulness, meditation. And then what you've been taught is that when the mind is experiencing fear or any other discontent feeling, you apply right effort where you cut off and let go of any discontentedness. This is the Eightfold Path. So you need that on board in order to eliminate any discontentedness, including fear. But once you understand right view, that the mind is causing this fear itself due to craving, desire, attachment, and you understand the mental discipline, and you're starting to implement that, developing your right mindfulness through your right concentration, and then applying right effort to cut off and let go and cut off and let go, then you can move into understanding how to eliminate the fear. The way you eliminate fear is eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And one of the things you can do with fear is you can desensitize the mind to what it is that it's craving or desiring. I'm going to give you some different examples on this, and then I'll open up to a discussion where we can talk about your specific fears, and I can help you to understand this. So let's just say you know that you're afraid of spiders. And anytime you see spiders, I don't like spiders. Oh, they're creepy, they're crawly, they have those little hairs, those eyes. Oh, I just don't like it. I don't want to see any spiders, right? And the mind might have this feeling about any number of things. Well, what the mind thinks the way to solve this problem is to push away spiders, and that I never want to see any spiders. This is aversion. The mind's trying to push away a certain being or push away a certain situation and think, I solved my problem because I'm never going to see spiders. I'm going to push that away. But you can't do that because you haven't actually solved the problem. Remember, the problem is the discontentedness. The problem is the fear. The cause of that problem is the craving, desire, attachment within the mind, the longing, the yearning, the wanting things to be a certain way. So pushing away this spider, it's not actually solving the problem because the craving is still in the mind. And you're not going to be able to go through life where you never see any spiders. You're going to encounter a spider at some point. So what you do in order to desensitize the mind is you put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. So if you know you're afraid of spiders, what I would recommend you do is look through magazines or look through the internet at pictures of spiders. You put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. And when you put the mind in the situation where you're looking at pictures of spiders on the internet, you're going to see the fear starting to come up. And then with your right mindfulness, you will then apply right effort and you cut that off and you cut that off and you cut that off. And you do this a few times until you notice that, the mind's not fearful anymore. But now you need to increment the stimulation. Now you need to go to like a museum or something like that where they have spiders preserved, where they have the little hairs, the little eyes, but they're not crawling around or anything like that. They're just preserved at a museum. And now you go there a time or two and you desensitize the mind to that. You'll notice the fears coming up perhaps. You cut that off and cut that off and cut that off. And now, as you feel calm and peaceful with that, you notice that you've done that a particular time or 2 or 3, and there's no fear. Now you increment it even further. Now you go out to a place where spiders are naturally in their natural habitat, running around, crawling around, doing different things, and you desensitize the mind further, exposing it to that thing which it fears. And then understanding the natural law of dhamma, you can understand, like, I'm not causing this spider any harm, so therefore there's no harm coming to me. In fact, this spider's more scared of me than I am of it. And whenever it sees me or hears me or smells me or feels my vibration, it runs away because it's not interested in being around me, right? So you need to desensitize the mind to this by putting the mind in this situation. And now, slowly but surely, you gradually train the mind to eliminate its craving. So you need to actually trigger the craving in order to actually eliminate it. And it's the exact opposite thing that the unenlightened mind wants to do. With a lack of wisdom, the mind thinks that I can just push these spiders away and I'm never going to see them ever again, and therefore I won't be afraid. But your mind's still holding on to the craving. So now the mind's still polluted. It still has this pollution, and now the mind lacks concentration. It has difficulties and struggles. So when you eliminate the craving, this frees the mind of that pollution. The mind can be peaceful and joyful. You can have less pollution in your mind, and you end up experiencing more concentration. While I taught you guys how to develop right concentration, where you can be focused and having clarity of mind, and one of the things I talked about is the meditation. Well, the way that you develop concentration is through eliminating craving, desires, attachments. When you're eliminating these attachments, that's where the mind's becoming more free, more liberated, more concentrated, more focused. So when you push something away, you haven't actually solved the problem because the mind's still holding on to the pollution. You need to be able to get rid of the pollution. So in the situation like a fear of spiders, you would like to put the mind in that situation in order to train it to let this craving, desire, attachment go, which is producing the fear. You can do the same thing with snakes, right? If there was a certain snake that, not sure what that is, but it's impermanent, we know that. The same thing with snakes, right? You can put the mind in that situation by looking at pictures, looking at preserved snakes in museums. We can go to places where there are snakes crawling around, like a pet store or a zoo or something like this. You can desensitize the mind to this. Things like death. If you're afraid of death, there's something that the Buddha taught called reflection on death or contemplation of death, where you sit and you close the eyes and you envision that you've died. You've envisioned that this body has died and you're like a fly on the wall. It's kind of like maybe the police show up to your parents' house or a doctor or nurse calls your parents and inform them that you've passed away. And now you play that out. You're not planning it. You're not aspiring to die, but you just be like a fly on a wall and you get comfortable with this death. You're confronting this death because death is going to come visit us. Whether we're ready for it or not, it's going to come visit us at some point, and you don't necessarily know when that time's going to come. So you can allow death to sneak up on you and catch you by surprise, or you can go visit death. You can go confront death. And if you confront death, you're confronting death on your terms, when you're ready. Because if you're not prepared and you're not ready for death, when death sneaks up on you, you won't be ready for death. But if you go see death and you go confront death, you're confronting death on your terms. So what you do is you reflect on your own death, you contemplate your own death. You're not planning it, you're not aspiring to die, but you're just facing it and realizing that this is a thing that is going to happen. You're putting the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, which is confronting your own death. Oftentimes we try to run away from that and we try to avoid it because it's too painful maybe for you to consider it. But if you confront your death, and yeah, you might have sorrow when you do what I'm sharing with you. When you reflect on your own death and you contemplate your own death, you might grieve, you might sorrow, you might cry. And this is the whole reason why you're doing this. You're triggering that craving. And as that craving is producing the discontentedness, you're having to cut it off and cut it off and cut it off. And it might take you a few minutes, a few hours, a few days. It might take you a week or two to get comfortable again with what you did during the reflection of death or the contemplation of death. And then that's when you do it again. After about a month or so, when your mind's kind of calmed down and you're back to normal, things are doing everything that you need to do, then you do it again. And what you'll notice is the mind is less discontent the second time. And then again, you recover a lot quicker. And now you wait a little while and then you do it again and you do it again. You might need to do it 3, 4, 5, 6 times before eventually you do it and you're like, yep, I'm going to die, no big deal, right? And you've trained your mind to let this go. That you've now confronted death, you've gotten comfortable with it, you've visited death, because it's going to come visit us, or we can go visit it. It's better if we go visit it, because when it sneaks up on you and you don't know it's coming, it's going to catch you by surprise. So this is the way you get comfortable with death. There's other fears out there that you may have, and you can share those with me, because in order to share this with you, it's very small. It's a very targeted thing that I'm sharing with you. I don't have anything other than this to share with you. But what I would like to do is invite you to share with me what kind of fears you have. And then if you would like to talk through a particular plan that now that you've learned what I just shared with you, that, hey, you're thinking that this would be a good approach, you can share that with me. And then I can give you some pointers and some ideas on that. Or if you're like, hey, this is the fear I have, and I have no idea how to do what it is that you're sharing, David, how would I implement this particular plan to eliminate the fear? Because this plan that I'm sharing with you, it can apply to about 80 or 90% of the different fears that you have, but there's some fears that you can't actually do this kind of thing with. But you can still eliminate that fear through other means like breathing, mindfulness, meditation, generosity, and other things. So if you guys would like to share some of the fears that you're experiencing, I will help you to be able to see how to put together a plan like this to confront that fear. Because what you're doing is you're trying to trigger the craving, desire, attachment, so that when it's coming up, the mind has the opportunity to let it go, let it go, let it go. It's kind of like throughout our life, we've been sweeping the dust under the carpet, and now we've got this big mound. And what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're pulling the carpet back, and the dust is flying around, and you got to get it out. So what this particular type of approach does is it pulls the carpet back. And then when the dust is flying around, you need to get it out and get it out and get it out. But once you get it out, you won't be fearful anymore, because you've gotten rid of the craving, desire, attachment. So that's what this is doing, is it's providing you the ability to pull the carpet back. The dust starts flying around, and you get the dust out of the house so you don't keep choking on it, because otherwise you're going to keep choking on this fear. It's going to keep shaking up the mind. So are there questions you guys have here? Are there either questions about this, or are there things that you guys would like to share in terms of your fears and getting help on how to put together a plan? If you could get the mics. Those of you guys that are online, if you would like to join this discussion, you can put your thoughts or what you would like to ask by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and then come into the conversation by opening up your microphone.
So, I didn't really consider this a fear, actually. So just fear of having money, making money. Mm-hmm. So whether that's abundance, but yeah, I'm not really, when you were saying, what is underneath that? I'm not really sure. I get close to it, but then I go away from it again. So I'd love to kind of understand it through the craving. I never really thought about it through a craving or a desire or an attachment. Mm-hmm.
So you're afraid to make too much money? Is that
Yeah, because money has been, this relationship with money is lots of money comes in, then there's no money, then I say, well, money isn't important. So I think I have a lot of conversations in my mind and beliefs, which I think I cleared to some degree.
Okay.
But I think it really is just living in a state of abundance and generosity, this kind of back and forth.
Up and forth, yeah.
Yeah, there isn't this sort of settling in. There isn't a peacefulness around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is one of the ones that this type of thing, you can't really approach it this way, because you can't really expose your mind to the money, so to speak.
Right.
But what's going to happen is you are going to be exposed to this impermanence, because that's what the mind's experiencing, is that there's not this consistent money all the way throughout your month and year. There's this impermanence that the mind's experiencing, and you're going to automatically be exposed to that. You don't need to induce it, because what I'm talking about here is inducing it, but it's just going to automatically happen by the nature of your life, that you're going to have this lots of money coming in, and then you're going to have no money coming in, because that's the way that your life is set up and the way that you're currently experiencing money. So as this is happening, you need to be able to see it as it's just impermanence. And then you need to be able to plan accordingly, that you're not going to spend all your money up front. You obviously have been learning how to do that, where you spread it out. Because I had the same thing when I was in different occupations where there would be lots of money coming in and then no money coming in and lots of money. You have to learn how to kind of spread it out, and that you don't know when your next amount of money is coming. So you kind of have to plan to spread these things out. So you're going to automatically be exposed to this particular thing because of the way that your life is set up.
So that raises another question. When do you know when it's fear versus like what we just spoke about, when it actually is fear?
Yeah, this is where your mindfulness comes in, that your awareness of mind needs to be able to determine, is this fear? Is this shame? Is it guilt? What is it? This is where the mindfulness, well developed, will be able to help you understand what feeling it is. But no matter what feeling it is, it's always going to be a craving, desire, attachment that's causing it. And the answer is always going to be to cut it off and let it go. This is why these natural laws, they're permanent. The natural laws of existence are permanent. So when the Buddha teaches these things, that's why you can just always know any discontentedness that comes up, try to catch it as a bodily sensation and cut it off and cut it off and cut it off. And then afterwards, when the mind's calm and you look inward and you figure out what is your mind actually craving, there's things like this that you can do to induce it, where you're triggering it, you putting the mind in that situation, and now you can cut it off and let it go in those situations. But you're not interested in doing this type of thing until you've already figured out what the particular craving is. So in this situation, it sounds like your mind's craving a consistent income. Yeah. Right? And when you're experiencing this impermanence where it's going up and down, your mind's uncomfortable with that because it's craving permanence. So your mind's going to need to get comfortable with this up and down and understand when the money comes in, don't get happy, don't get excited when you have all that abundance of money. Just understand, like, okay, there's money here and let me figure out what to do with this. So if you don't allow the mind to get the conditioned pleasant feelings, then when there's no money coming in, you won't get the painful ones of fear or whatever else is in there that might be arising.
Lovely. That's so helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Ken?
Hey, David. Thank you for your teachings, by the way. Two things. One, every time you mention... Is
the mic on?
Hello?
There we go. Okay.
Every time you mention craving, I have a tough time defining that. I crave ice cream, but I guess craving would fall under the same category as desire attachment, because my fear a lot of time is fear of the unknown and fear of the future. And I immediately, in a split second, write this narrative riddled with fear. Am I going to get enough? Will I be in the right place? Well, just a million scenarios. And I'm trying to apply the word craving to it, but I see more attachment to the dark side of things, maybe, as opposed to what could be. And I hope this makes sense. And what do I do? Do I have faith that in the universe that everything is going to work out the way it's supposed to? Do I feel if I cut off that narrative and let it go, I'm kind of sweeping it under the carpet. So how do I address, in a positive manner, if that's the right word, my visions of what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go, how is it going to be, or maybe it's none of my business yet, because I'm not there.
Okay. So we talk about this aspect of the mind as craving, desire, attachment, wants, expectation, clinging, holding, grasping. This is like the way to describe what's happening in the mind. And this is a mental longing and strong eagerness, wanting things to be a certain way. So if you have a craving for ice cream, that means that when you get ice cream, you're very happy, you're very excited, but when you don't have it, you'll be irritable or grumpy. And if that's not the case, then that's not a craving, desire, attachment, because oftentimes when we think about craving, before you understand fully what this word is, you might think of it like being hungry, but that's not necessarily a craving. It can be a craving, but not necessarily. So The craving is the mental longing, yearning for something. That's what the craving is. Thinking that this external thing is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind yearns and longs and chases after it. It's like the mind thinks the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So the mind might chase money or a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, or a new house or a new car, or a new job. It's not the job that's the craving. It's not the money that's the craving. It's what's inside the mind that's longing and yearning for it. So it's not the object itself. It's what's going on inside the mind. So this is what we call craving, desire. And as students start to learn with me more, I start to help them see the difference between craving, desire, attachment, and then what we call clinging, right? So there's the craving, the desire. This is the longing, the yearning, the thinking that something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction. But then once the mind's craving something, it will then cling. It will then hold on to it. These are two different things. When people first get started with me, I describe it all as one thing, but in reality, it's two different things. That the mind's longing and yearning for something external, thinking this is going to provide lasting satisfaction, and then the mind clings to it. So it's like, I really want that boyfriend or girlfriend. Gosh, I'm single. I really want them so badly. I want this person. I want this person. Let me go outside and try to meet people and see if I can find this person. Okay, now you found that person. Now you found that boyfriend or girlfriend. Now I'm going to cling to them and I'm going to hold on to them and not let them go. And then this sabotages the relationship because it smothers it and it crushes it, right? So these are the two different aspects of the mind that are happening. Craving, the longing, yearning, and then the clinging. So with your mind being worried about the future, it sounds like, right? Like worried about what may or may not happen in the future. This is the mind longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way in the future. And now the mind's worried about that. When in reality, your future is based on what's going on in the present moment, in the decisions that you're making. There is no entity or a being called the universe that is going to just kind of sort things out for you and make sure that things happen in a certain way. Anything that you experience in the future is based on the decisions that you make now in the present moment. And having wisdom to make wise decisions now will ensure that as things go forward in your life, that you'll be able to experience wholesome outcomes and wholesome benefits. So when you see your mind longing, yearning, and worrying about the future and what may or may not come, that's the discontentedness arising. And the craving is the mind's longing, yearning for this thing to happen in the future. So you'd like to cut that off and cut that off and cut that off and bring your mind back to the present moment and be like, what do I need to do right now? Oh, I'm having a conversation with my wife. Let me just have a conversation with my wife. Or, oh, I'm on an airplane listening to some music. Let me just listen to this music. I don't need to be worried about the future. But this isn't to say that we don't ever think about the future. When we talk about the mind being in the present moment, it doesn't mean you never think about the past. It doesn't mean you never think about the future. Because you can look to your past and you can look at things that you did either wisely or unwisely, and you can learn from that. You can gain wisdom from those things, and now in the present moment, you have more wisdom. And then you can also plan the future. You can look at the future and you can figure out, what am I going to be doing in the future? Let me make some plans and some decisions that lead to some wholesome outcome. When we talk about having the mind in the present moment, it means to practice singleness of mind, doing one thing at a time. So there's times where you might need to plan the future. And as you plan the future and you set goals and objectives, you need to be sure you don't cling to those, that you don't hold on to those, you don't crave and yearn and long, because whatever you plan in the future, it's not going to happen exactly that way. You guys know that now, right? It's not going to happen that way. Even though you plan it, even though you would like this thing to happen, the whole idea of having a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan that some cultures teach, you don't even know what you're going to have for lunch right now. How could you know what you're going to do 10, 20 years from now, right? Some cultures teach you to have this 5, 10, 20-year plan. You don't even know what you're going to have for lunch. You don't even know if you're going to go to lunch. You might walk outside and twist your ankle on the steps and end up at the hospital for your lunch. You don't actually know, right? So we oftentimes are taught that we're supposed to know the future and everything that's really going to happen, and we don't. So the thing is that you just reside in the present moment. maintain your wisdom, and as things are happening, you just handle things wisely, one by one by one by one. And you can plan the future, you can have goals and objectives, but just don't cling to them, because you'll work towards them, and in some cases you'll accomplish that, in some cases you won't. And if you're longing, yearning, and clinging to this goal or objective and you don't accomplish it, you'll be frustrated, you'll be agitated, you'll be annoyed. But instead, let's just say you get to 80% of your goal. Then, okay, well, I got to 80%. What do I need to do here? Maybe I need to extend my timeline, or maybe I need to adjust my goal. Maybe it was too ambitious. Maybe, 80% is enough. Maybe that's all I really need to accomplish. So I used to get to a certain point in time where I would set goals that I knew that there was no way that I could make it, in order to train my mind that you're not always going to meet your goals. So you can look to the future in terms of planning and preparing and trying to organize things, but just don't cling to those goals and objectives. And anything that you experience in life is going to be based on decisions that you make. There's nothing that's just going to be sorted out through faith or anything like that. Mm-hmm. More questions? I see you guys have microphones.
I have two questions. I remember, I've been working on fears for a while, some big ones that I had. So one was a fear of heights that I had. I started when I was younger. I had a lot of that. So I think I was doing exposure therapy. I would constantly go on roller coasters, go on a bungee ride, stuff like that, whittling it down. And then I'm trying to find out when do you know it's gone? You don't have the overwhelming anxiety or anything like that. For instance, my friend's balcony is on the 23rd floor, so I can go on the balcony, I can see that the railing's rusty, lean over it, and then it's when is it just self-preservation? And and also, can you detect little subtle unease? That's where I'm exploring to say, okay, is it done, for instance, or...
Yeah, that's how you'll know that the craving's completely gone, is when there's not even that slight unsettledness when you're looking over the edge of a 23-story building, right? You shouldn't even have the slightest discomfort. You should be able to look, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of people down there. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm up pretty high. Okay, no big deal. And it's just another thing. And what you would do is normally, since we're talking about this, you're already at the 23 stories, but normally what you do is you gradually build your way up to that, right? If you're afraid of heights, you might go up 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 steps on a staircase and look over. And then maybe you go up on a ladder and look over. And then maybe you go up on the first or second or third story of a mall and look over. And then you go up higher and higher. And you do this over multiple sessions where the mind can be desensitized, or some people call it exposure therapy, where you're exposing the mind to the thing that it fears so that you can trigger that craving, and then you can cut it off and let it go. So the way you'll know it's completely gone is through your mindfulness or awareness of mind, because you know that when you used to put the mind in this situation, there was all this fear that came up. But now with your mindfulness, when you keep doing this over and over and over again, there isn't even the slightest unsettledness by the time you get to the point where the craving is completely eliminated, not even the slightest ickiness in the mind.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. The other one, I guess, is things that maybe similar to your question about the unknown. I can prepare myself for a lot of things I run into, but often in meditation is where I would run into things that I had not expected, or something that was out of the ordinary or not mundane that kind of appears that just either I wasn't accepting before. My process currently was just to work on upekkha, equanimity, just be more build up my stock of equanimity, and that helps. I can, as I start to see things that I didn't believe in or wasn't, or that are shocking to me, for instance, your example, if I saw past lives, that would be shocking to me and offset me for a long period of time. Over time, thinking about that, working with it, helps me process that. But every time something brand new comes out of a box that I had, maybe out of left field, in my blind spot, those things I have a little bit more trouble digesting and working with. And then I'm thinking I can't use my exposure therapy idea because I don't know how to do that. Maybe.
Yeah, so when something's happening that you don't expect, that means there's an expectation in the mind. So there's a craving, desire, attachment. So when that thing is happening and you didn't expect it, that means the mind is craving and holding on because it thought this was going to occur and this ended up occurring. So you need to let go of this. Whenever something's happening, it's like, all right, well, let's handle this now. Right? So you never know what's going to necessarily happen at any given situation. So you cultivate your wisdom, and then whatever is happening in that moment, you make decisions wisely of what do I need to do here? Is this a wholesome thing that's going to result in wholesome outcomes, or is this something unwholesome and I need to extinguish it? So when something's coming back to you that you didn't expect, look at it, determine whether it's wholesome or unwholesome. If it's wholesome, maybe you go forward with that. If it's unwholesome, you got to figure out how to extinguish it. And sometimes it's to walk away. Sometimes it's to make a few decisions that essentially buries this into sand so that it doesn't occur anymore. But you need to just look at each moment by moment, because you don't know what's going to necessarily unfold from moment to moment. And you just handle what you're experiencing in the present moment. That's why it's so important to be in the present moment without these pollutions of mind, because then you can see very clearly what is transpiring and then apply your wisdom to either extinguish it or decide to go forward with something that's wholesome.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, you're welcome. Mr. Leo.
Yeah. Now it's not so present, but I think it can come back. Sometimes I thought a bit about my father. He's 67 now, and if I look at his father and his grandfather, they died really early. His mother also died early, so I thought, so they also died around 66 to 70 something. So I think, because now I'm doing my my journey on this path, so I think about not being so much at home. So I'm not sure how much I will see him. Lifestyle is also not really good. A lot of meat, sugar. I think he's a workaholic, so he's with his mind somewhere else. So yeah, that's also the fear I often have about.
Okay, great. So that contemplation of death, or the reflection of death that I mentioned about doing it for yourself to eliminate your fear of death, you can do the same thing for other people. So if you fear the death of your father, then you can, instead of contemplating your death and reflecting on your death, you can sit with your eyes closed and contemplate his death. So what you do is you envision that the police or a doctor has called you and said, hey, your father's died. And you can imagine that however you imagine it. Of course, it's not going to necessarily happen that way, but you just confront it in your own mind, and then you play that out. What would you do? And you're not planning it. You just kind of play it out and confront it, because whenever it happens, you're going to make decisions in the present moment. But for this activity to be able to trigger that craving and then cut off any discontentedness that is arising, you put the mind in this situation, you kind of play it out. Okay, maybe you go back to Germany, maybe you're involved in a funeral, maybe you need to pick out a casket, maybe you need to pick out clothes that he's going to wear, maybe you need to inform other relatives, maybe you need to have an event where people come over and you guys have food together as a family at your house. You play all these things out over a 10, 15, 20-minute period within your own mind. And you might grieve, like I mentioned. There most likely is going to be sorrow and grief and despair, perhaps. And that means that the mind is having that craving triggered. And then you're going to need to cut that off and let it go. And then after your mind regains its composure after a few weeks or a month or so, then you do it again. And you keep doing it this way until you can go through an activity and exercise like this, where you contemplate his death and there's no sorrow, there's no grief, there's no despair, there's no painful feelings whatsoever. And that's how you'll know that you've eliminated this particular craving, because there's no fear that's coming up, there's no sorrow that's coming up. This will also help you to not only eliminate any fear, but it's eliminating that underlying craving, that underlying attachment to your father. So then you'll see that you're not going to have attachment to him in certain aspects of your life, because this will cause problematic difficulties, not just when you're thinking about his death and fearing that, but there's other things that are going on in your relationship where you're having attachment and there's discontentedness arising and it's causing difficulties in y'all's relationship. So this is the way to not only eliminate your attachment, which is causing fear, but your attachment in general to your dad, so that now when he says something you disagree with, you can be completely comfortable with that because you understand, like, hey, he's impermanent. His thoughts and ideas and experiences are different than mine. That's just impermanence. I'm not going to agree with everything he says, and that's okay. So you can do this if you have fear for your parents' death, but you can also do it just to let go of any attachment that you have to any being, whether it's your parents, your children, if you have a pet or an animal that you're really close to, any living being, you can do this for. And this is the ultimate way to eliminate attachment to people who are close to you. So this will help you eliminate that fear and the attachment in general as well.
The one also, I also think about if I'm doing my journey, I think about the future. I'm not sure how I will earn money or where are my qualities, because I did this forestry training. But if I think about it, it's quite dangerous. Walking in the forest, cutting trees with the branches falling on your head, and there are a lot of stories. So it's really dangerous job actually compared to other jobs. So maybe it's wiser if I don't do that too much. But I don't have other trainings, so I'm quite untrained in things. So I'm a bit afraid about how I can earn money to have a good pension later. People tell me, my mother, my siblings, you also have to think about your pension later. Look at your mother, has a bit problems with that. So that's also anxious.
Okay. So if you're going to maintain this job, you can do the same thing that I was talking about with reflection on your death. You can do the same thing and do this reflection that you have gotten hit by these branches coming down out of the trees, and you're laying on the ground and you're exposed there, you're bleeding, your bones are broken, they're calling the ambulance, they can't get the tree off of you. You can do those same kind of confrontations within your own mind and train your mind not to fear this. So this is one thing you can do if you're planning to keep that job. One of the ways to eliminate a craving, desire, attachment is to cut it off and let it go, the way that I teach you guys throughout the various classes. But another way that I teach too is you can actually fulfill a craving. So say, for example, you've always wanted to go to the Philippines and you've never been to the Philippines and you always want to go there and you've just been longing, yearning to go there. Well, if you know that going to the Philippines isn't going to hurt anything, it's not going to cause harm, one of the ways to eliminate this craving is to cut it off and let it go. But another way to eliminate the craving is just go to the Philippines, go check it out. Right? Just go there, fly there, look around, spend your week or 2 or 3, however long it is that you'd like to go. And then you've eliminated that craving and it's out of the mind and you're not longing and yearning for it anymore. So therefore the mind's not going to be discontent as a result of it. So the same thing with something like this. Like if you have this worry that this particular job or occupation isn't going to be long lasting and you're not going to be able to have a pension, you're not going to be able to have these kinds of things that you need in life, you can choose to get another job. You can choose to reskill and get other skills and other abilities. You're young enough that you can gain other skills and move into another career. So that's one of the ways to eliminate this worry about whether you're going to have a pension or whether you're going to have money later, is to actually fulfill it and make sure that you do have it. And then your mind won't have this craving and longing, yearning anymore. It won't have this discontentedness. So that's another option. So that's why I said, okay, if you're going to keep this job, here's one thing you can do for that. But if you're not going to keep the job and you'd like to fulfill this craving, that'll help you to extinguish the craving for a pension because you've got one. That's one of the ways to do it.
Okay, and if I reflect on a branch falling on my leg and my leg is damaged and so on, how much detail I should recover this? Feeling the pain also like this, really.
Yeah, the more detail that you put into it, the better, because you're imagining all this in your mind and you're trying to convince the mind that this thing has actually occurred. And then the more you can do that, the more vivid you can make that, the more that it's going to trigger your craving that is in there. And then as that discontentedness is arising, you can cut it off and cut it off and cut it off. So the more, the better.
What did you say? How often? Like once a day or once a month, or what was it?
Once a day.
Reflect?
Once a day is usually not helpful because the mind doesn't have time to regain its composure. Oftentimes, particularly if it's a pretty strong craving. So usually you do it once, and usually it takes, especially the first time you do it, it usually takes a few days. It could even take a week or two to kind of regain your composure. That's why you need to have the Eightfold Path underway, because you need the skills and abilities to be able to regain your composure. And then usually about a month later is usually a good time to do it. But, that doesn't mean you couldn't do it within 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. But then you kind of hit it again in a month later, because you would like to give your mind time to breathe and kind of like, regain its composure for 2 or 3 weeks or so before you do it again. So usually spreading it out that amount of time is usually best. And then after you've done this 3, 4, 5 times, depending on your mind, you'll eventually do it and you'll be completely peaceful and calm, and you'll know like, the mind's let that go. There's no more fear, because you'll see from the first session to the third or to the fourth or to the fifth session, the emotions have completely been eliminated, that the fear, the discontent feelings are no longer arising. And that's how you'll know that this has been eliminated. And then if this ever does happen, where you do get hit by a branch falling down, you'll be calm because you've lived that out before. You've done that in your mind before, and now you'll know to be calm, and you'll actually be more successful in getting the health restored that you need. Because in a situation like that, where say, a branch does fall on you, and just say it does break your leg, if your mind's all agitated and frustrated and you're uncalm, you're going to bleed more. Right? If you're bleeding, and you're more likely to die in that situation. Whereas if you can stay calm, you're actually going to be more successful in remedying that situation. And this is one of the reasons why staying calm is so important, because when your mind's all frazzled, you're going to make unwise decisions that can lead to more unwholesome results. So you can take a bad situation and turn it into a worse situation. But if you can train your mind to be calm when these kinds of things are happening, you can stay calm, make wise decisions, and then actually recover and restore back to health. But you would have challenges doing that if your mind was uncalm.
The same is with another, for example, it's not a branch, it's a car accident. It's the same. Then I'm more calm in the situation.
Exactly.
Right? Because
exactly. You can do those same kind of things, because sometimes people get into a car accident, and talking about the word trauma, because we talked about that towards the beginning of the week, you get into a traumatic car accident, and now when you're in the hospital laying there for a week, your mind is having all these painful feelings, and the mind is associating this with the car and this accident. And now the mind doesn't want to get in a car, and it's very fearful. If you've ever even been in a light accident, after the accident, you might hit be hinting that phantom brake. When I got in a car accident one time, and then I was in the passenger side, I was hitting the brake, even though there's no brake there, because your mind's like scared and fearful. It's still holding on. This is the clinging that the mind's doing. So you would like to eliminate that clinging. So let's just use this example. If you had fear of riding in a car after a car accident, and someone might call this trauma, and people oftentimes think that you can't eliminate any kind of trauma, whether it's a car accident or sexual abuse or physical abuse or something like that, but you can. All trauma is the mind is holding on to a certain experience. It's clinging. So in this example, if someone was fearing to ride in the car because they've been in a car accident, what I would suggest for them to do is to find someone they trust, that they feel is a good driver, and sit in the passenger side and drive around the neighborhood streets for 5, 10, 15 minutes and just get comfortable with riding in the neighborhood streets. And their mind's going to be shaken up by this, because they were just in this horrible car accident a few weeks before. Now, once they get comfortable with that, now you get in the car and you drive in the neighborhood streets, and you drive around, and maybe you have someone next to you that you feel comfortable with, or maybe not. And you do this a couple of times. And now maybe you go out on larger roads with someone else driving and that you trust. And now you're in the passenger seat, and you're desensitizing the mind to this. And now you go out and you drive around on the larger roads. And then after you've gotten comfortable with that, now you go out on the larger roads and you drive on the larger roads. So you gradually increment the stimulation to get comfortable again, and training the mind to let go. Because what's happening is the mind is associating, if I ride in a car, I'm going to get in an accident, and that's going to be painful. This is the mind's craving and clinging. That the mind, when we talk about its craving permanence, it oftentimes thinks one particular experience, this is going to always happen this way. So because I was in a car accident and now I experience that pain, the mind thinks every time I get into a car, I'm going to experience this pain. This is the same thing like if you ever got beat up by a guy in a green jacket. Anytime you see someone wearing a green jacket, your mind might be fearful because the mind is associating a green jacket with getting beat up. Right? And this is the clinging that the mind does. It's that permanence that the mind is expecting and thinking of. So what you're trying to do is show the mind that you can get into a car and you can be safe. You're trying to eliminate that conditioning. The mind has been conditioned to believe that every time you get in a car, you're going to get in an accident and that's going to end you up in the hospital. Now you're going to experience this pain. And what you're trying to do is show the mind that no, that's not the case. You can go out in the car with somebody you trust. You can drive around on the neighborhood streets and you can come home and you can be safe. And there was no car accident. And that's why you'll need to do this multiple times. So you're replacing that conditioning and that clinging that the mind's doing and holding on with these positive experiences where the mind realizes I can go out in the car and not get in an accident and I can be safe. And that's what you're doing with the snake and the spider and the heights and all these other things and the death. And you're showing your mind like, hey, you can do these things and be just fine because the mind's been conditioned to believe if I go up high on a high floor, something bad's going to happen to me. Or if I see a spider, something bad's going to happen. Or if I see a snake, something bad's going to happen. Or if I go out in a car, something's bad that's going to happen to me. And you need to be able to see this natural law of dhamma, that you're not causing any harm. So no harm's coming to you, right? You can go out in this car and you can experience safety and that's okay. You can look at a spider and it's not going to bite you and you're not going to die. You can look at a snake and it's not going to bother you and it's not going to bite you and you're not going to die. So you need to replace those memories of car equals pain with car equals safe transportation. And yes, sometimes we do get in car accidents, but that's impermanence. It's not going to happen that way every single time. So these are some of the things that you can do. And this is what's happening inside your mind to be able to undo that conditioning and clean that away and purify the mind. Let's see if we have any questions online. Oh, you have a question, Steve? Sure.
Thank you, David. A few years ago, as part of something I was doing, I deliberately sort of tried to document my list of fears of, what have been my major fears throughout the life. And there was one right at the top of the list, which I remember still feeling embarrassed about. And it was fear of other people's opinions. When I look back on it, I'd almost use the word terror as opposed to fear that had dominated my life. And I can see how it relates to solving that. The teachings sort of relate to solving that problem, but, wrong view of self and craving certain outcomes and being attached to certain things, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But I still sometimes find that if I'm, feeling discontent, I can still sometimes find that at the root of that is fear of what other people may think and the like. I don't know if you have any comment around this particular fear.
Sure. Is it other people's opinions about you as a person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. What'll eliminate this is eliminating personal existence view.
Yeah.
That's what'll eliminate that. So you'll be in situations, I'm sure, where people will be giving you their opinions of you, because people will have a certain amount of ego and feel like they need to step into your life and tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing. This kind of thing is going to happen. So when those things are happening, you'll need to cut that off and let it go and do all those other things that we talked about yesterday about eliminating personal existence view. That's what'll solve that one. So that's one that you can induce, right? Because it's up to other people to choose to do those things. It's unwise to go around and give unsolicited advice, right? But people do it. That's their own ego that's doing that. And when it is happening, you'll just need to be aware of it. And this is the situation, like, if somebody started to just give me unsolicited advice, I would typically just sit there and then I wouldn't even pay attention to it. And I would just either change the subject or I'd get up and walk away, not because I'm discontent, but just because it's unwise to sit there and let somebody's ego just kind of spew on you. But in your situation, if you're ever in a situation where somebody's giving you their opinion of you, I would just sit there and listen to it, not because it's wise for them, because it kind of them giving unsolicited advice is really unwise for them, but it's really helpful for your mind. So like if you did I don't know that you do Facebook, but let's just say you did Facebook and people were commenting on your Facebook and stuff like this. This is going to trigger that personal existence view and give you a chance to cut it off and let it go. So what you're doing on this path to enlightenment is, as you get on the path to enlightenment, you're starting to change the way we function in the world and do things differently. And you need to kind of live that life for a period of time. That's why you can't instantly get to enlightenment. You need to live your life according to the Eightfold Path. And enough things need to happen in your life, enough impermanence needs to happen, that it gives the opportunity for the mind to get triggered for these discontent feelings, and then you deal with it through the Eightfold Path. Where before, what we would have done is maybe push this person away or push that situation away. We learn that that's unwise and that we do something different. So what I would encourage you to do is, if somebody's sharing their opinions or views with you about yourself, just sit there and listen to it. Once you get rid of personal existence view and you realize that you can do that with no problem, ultimately you might decide to start doing something different, because it's unwise to just sit around and listen to unsolicited advice, because you're going to just end up getting that over and over and over again. But for now, I would say, just listen to it, because the mind needs that in order to get rid of this craving, desire, attachment.
Oh, thank you. Just a point of clarification, which probably reinforces the point of getting rid of personal existence view, is it was fear of the opinions. 99 times out of 100, those opinions wouldn't be forthcoming. I would just be thinking that this person might be making this judgment of me, and how should I be reacting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so getting rid of that personal existence view, that's one of the reasons why it's so important, is to be able to get rid of that so that your mind can reside peaceful and joyful, because you can't control whether someone gives you their opinion or not, right? You can be sitting at the DMV getting your driver's license, and someone just comes up to you and starts giving you their opinion. I was eating lunch a few years ago at that restaurant that we all go to, and I was talking Thai with the workers, and a person just came up to me and started talking Thai. They were not Thai, but they were come up and they started talking Thai. And I was having difficulties understanding them because they weren't talking very clearly with Thai, but in their mind, they thought they were. And they were trying to teach me how to speak Thai. I didn't even know this person. I was just speaking Thai with the workers, and they stepped up and started trying to teach me how to speak Thai. But I couldn't understand their Thai because it was so unclear. And they thought that I didn't know Thai because I couldn't understand them, because in their opinion, they were speaking very clear, but I was having difficulties. So they assumed that I didn't know how to speak Thai, and he started trying to teach me Thai. So you can't control whether people are going to give you their opinions and views. This guy was assuming that I couldn't speak Thai because I couldn't understand him and how he was speaking Thai. But I speak Thai all the time to lots of different people, but I just couldn't understand his Thai because he had this really thick accent. I don't know where he was from. And I see him every once in a while. I was still in that restaurant, but I don't ever really talk to him. I just wave to him and I smile and things like this. He's always alone. He's never with other people. I never see him with other people. And one of the reasons why is because his ego, right? He came in and he's just like giving me this unsolicited advice. And he probably does that to other people. And people are like, I don't want to spend time with that guy, right? So I smile to him, I say hello, and they say good morning, things like this. But these are the kind of things that happen, is people will just show up in your life with all this unsolicited advice and opinions, and you can't control that. So all you can do is control your own mind. So in this situation, when this guy started doing this, I just said, oh, okay. And I just started handling my business. I didn't even address with that. And that's what I would suggest that most people do when someone's giving you unsolicited advice. But in your situation, a little bit different for a period of time until you train your mind to let go of this craving and this worry about what other people might say. Yeah. Great discussion, guys. I'm not seeing anything here on Facebook or YouTube. So what I'm going to do is just start our mid-morning break here. We'll have a good 20-minute break. Let's come back at 10:45. And what I'm going to be teaching when we come back from break is this topic of God's creative action. You have free will. I'm going to teach you all about this being, some things that you may have been exposed to in the past that you're going to need to learn in order to either have a relationship with this being or not, depending on how you would like to go forward in your practice. So enjoy your break, and let's get back together at 10:45. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/supportbuddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.